Say it one more time. I am waiting on you. Lord, I'm waiting on you. I'm patiently waiting on you. 'Cause I ain't worried about the time. Lord, I seem to find my strength while I'm waiting on you. Oh, they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They will mount up with wings just like eagles. And they will run, never be weary. They'll walk and never faint. Oh, Lord, that's why I will choose to wait. I am waiting on you. Yes, I am. Waiting on you. Patiently waiting. Patiently waiting on you. Oh, yeah. I ain't worried about the time. Lord, I seem to find. Lord, I seem to find strength while I'm waiting. Sing, Heath, come on. Oh, they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They will mount up with wings like eagles. And not grow weary. They shall walk and shall not faint. No, no, come on. That is why I will choose to wait. 'Cause I'm waiting on you. Lord, I'm waiting. Waiting on you. Patiently waiting. Patiently waiting on you. I ain't worried about the time. Cause Lord, I seem to waiting. Sing that verse one more time, son. Come on, tell them this. They that wait upon the Lord, He shall renew their strength. They will mount up with wings, yes they will, like the eagles. They shall run and not grow weary, no. They shall walk and shall not faint. That is why I will choose to waiting on you. Lord, I'm waiting on you. I'm patiently waiting on you. Cause Lord, I'm such a strength while I'm waiting. Strength while I'm waiting. Strength while I'm waiting. While I'm waiting. I find strength while I'm waiting. Your presence waiting on you. Strength while I'm waiting. Here in your presence, I'm waiting on you. Yes, we are. Strength while I'm waiting on you. All right, strength while I'm waiting on you. Most people that I encounter, they actually deplete their strength while they are waiting on God. Well, good evening, everyone. It's so wonderful to see those of you who have chose to join us on this evening. Welcome to those of you who are in the Zoom room and those who are joining us by the YouTube channel. Welcome to Tuesday night where we get lit. That is Lessons in Truth Tuesdays. I pray things are well with you. I speak that they are, even if they appear not to be. So this evening, like every Tuesday evening, we're out here and we're exploring a lesson in truth. Now, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to launch the next 4 weeks inside of this time we are together, which is called Lessons in Truth. I'm going to prepare a boot camp. It's going to be 4 hours, 4 weeks, where I will present to you lessons in truth, the basic lessons in truth that is important. Because here's what I found. So many of you are have expanded beyond what you thought you knew. Each of you have converged upon this time together from different roads, and you've picked up what you needed to pick up. You've had the experiences you had to have experienced. Some of you were Baptist, some of you were Pentecostal, some of you were Word of Faith, some of you were Lutheran, some of you were Catholic, some of you were not sure what you were, but you've had these experiences, and I say to you, the word says, despise not the time of small beginnings. Because everything that you've gone through, everything that you have experienced, and you have grown through them, meaning now it becomes an experience, have brought you to the place where you are right here, right now. Some people will tune into the conversation and they get lost. They don't feel like this is the appropriate conversation for them. Well, I let them be where they are. But if you are following me, you're following me because there is something that I am saying that has your ear. You're in alignment with what I'm saying. You're going in the same direction. You're tracking with me. I welcome that. But I'm also finding that it's necessary that a course of instruction be given that gives you a firm foundation. One of the things that I want to do is see Christ formed in each of you. That Christ consciousness that is spoken to over in Galatians. That's what I labor for. That's why I do this. That's why I come on and I appear to be speaking to an audience of me sometimes, but I'm persistent. I'm consistent because I want to see Christ formed in each of you. So I'm putting together a boot camp. And this boot camp is going to introduce you to the basic principles of what we call divine science, or what we may call unity, or what some may call it religious science, or what I just choose to call it is New Thought. Understanding the mind of God, understanding the thinking of source. So join me as I prepare that. I'm going to roll it out to you and get that to you here in the next day or two. Well, tonight we're talking about not buckling under the weight. Is waiting easy for you? Why don't you put that in there? Type in, if waiting is not an issue for you, you have a promise that has been spoken to you. You have something that you've been waiting for, that you know that source that God has for you, but you have found that you become dismayed, discouraged. You maybe have even gotten in the way. How is that? Maybe you're spending time affirming things. Maybe you're spending time in meditation. Maybe you're doing all these things not to be in relationship, not to enhance your relationship with source, but you're doing them that you can expedite the thing, the promise. No matter how good the word that has been spoken over you is, you must always be grounded in the promise. The promise that I'm talking about, that God desires to dwell fully in you. Now, source is in all of us, or we wouldn't be alive. But he's not dwelling. What I mean is to dwell means to thrive, means to fully express itself. Source wants to dwell
When you say come tell someone to come and dwell with me, that means they can come and live with you. They can come experience your habitat. And so Source desires to do the same thing. Well, let's jump in this evening. The song you heard was Clint Brown, a song I was listening to back in the 2012, Waiting on You, because I was waiting on God. As a matter of fact, may have been earlier than that. Let me see if I can find how long ago that song was. That song, see if I can find that song. No, I can't, so I'm not going to waste time. But I know I've been waiting on God for a long time, my whole life. What do you mean you've been waiting on God your whole life? At the age of accountability, and that is when I came into an awareness that I was having this dialogue with something greater than me, but evidently was part of me. And a lot of times this dialogue wasn't taking place through words, but they were taking place through a conversation, mind to mind, my mind to the mind of Source. I was in that secret place, and I could go into there anytime, and you can learn to go into the secret place. It says, he that dwells in the secret place of the Almighty. See, and this dwell means this is my habitat. This is where I go to. And many of us think we only can do it when we're at church on Sunday, or if we get in a yoga position. All of that stuff is not necessary. If I know the right words to say. Well, when you really go into that most holy of holies, that secret place, you decrease, you die. There's no double conversation, because you now have gone back to Source. It's sort of like, I know when I was a kid, I enjoyed sitting on the front porch. In our neighborhoods, we can go up and down the block. And some people had these things, lights that would draw the gnats to the light, and then you hear them popping. They will be drawn into the light, and they dissipate and go back to the energy from which they come. And so when we go into our secret place, it should be like that. I must decrease. Matter of fact, I die daily. The more time you spend in the silence. Now, I'm saying silence because this is the key. To be in silence don't mean you're going into a conversation with God. It means you get to the place where there's no conscious conversation. You're just present. And while you're present, Source begins to express itself. And then when you come out of that, you come to the realization of this is what Source desires to do as me, through me. And if Source desires to do something as you, through you, there's nothing you need to do other than be able to say, I'm available to you. Now, why am I in this vein? I'm in this vein because for years I've been studying all kinds of things. Matter of fact, I've been spending a lot of time studying the ancient wisdom. And I'm glad I've studied the ancient wisdom, because now I'm at a place where I can connect the ancient wisdom to the new wisdom. And a lot of times we think we know something, but until you can trace that thing back to its very beginning, and then you trace it back and you can see this is what that was for. This is why this was done this way. And you begin to lose all the embellishments where the scripture talks about the traditions of men makes the word of God of no effect. The traditions are those things that you identify with your cultural selves, your physical selves, the things that you all do inside of your the way you practice your faith. Those are traditions. But the thing that is universal is truth. That is, it's the same amongst all people, no matter where they are. So you take away the traditions, you take away the cultural practices, and you come to a place of purity. And that's what we want to get at with lessons in truth. We want to understand beyond the obvious. And that's what I want to talk about tonight. I've waited all my life for this day. I've waited for this time. And I'm still waiting, because every day is a wait, because we're called to wait. We wait when we go into the silence. The more you're comfortable with going into the silence, and the more you go into the silence, the more anxiety drops off, worry drops off, the things drops off because the things show up. Let's talk about something real quick. The word desire. The opposite of that would be want. The word want says there's something you would like that is not present in your life. And it usually our wants usually come by way of our sensory self. We smell a certain fragrance. It could be food. It could be the aroma of a fragrance, and you desire it. What's that smell? Oh, I want to get that. I want that bottle, and I want some for myself. There's nothing wrong with wants, but we got to understand the difference between a want and a desire. Those who are of the world live from want to want. Another thing about want, it represents lack. The word want is it represents not in existence right now. But when you talk about desire, desire is a kingdom concept. Desire is a spiritual concept. Desire says that it comes not from my head, but it comes from deep inside of me. It just drops on me. You may have a desire to experience something, to do something, to be in possession of something that just comes out of nowhere. You don't smell it, but you have a desire for it. You don't see it, but you have a desire for it. The word says God drops or gives you the desires of your head. Yeah, see, I know some of y'all said, nope. I know that. I want to see if you know that. God does not give you. That is, it does not drop in on you desires in your head. Desires are dropped into your heart. And when God drops something in on you, God is not saying that this is a thing that you have to do. All you have to do is align with it and accept it. Because the word tells us that with God, all things are possible. But with man, things are impossible. Sometimes you have some things you want, it's just impossible, but you still want them. Well, we have to understand, but if there's a desire, then that means there's possibility. And the reason why I say is there's possibility, because you can have a desire that is dropped in on you, that is expressly for you, but the possibility of it coming into your reality is up to you. You have to understand the laws. You have to understand the principles. You have to understand the practices. And I'm going to give you an example. Earlier, or on Sunday, I had a message about don't buckle under the weight. And the example that I used had to do with the character of Saul of the Old Testament. And one of the things I told you was, now each of you need to get a book. There's a book I recommend. If you're going to go on this journey with me, this is the book you need to get. It's called the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary. Notice it's worn. I've had this thing for a very long time. The cover is worn because I've been using this for about 40 years. Even when I wasn't part of or wasn't aware of what unity was all about, sources always led me to the resource. So you have to just trust that source will get you to the expected end. I'm a very quiet person. Most people don't know that. You would think that I'm not quiet because I talk a lot, I teach a lot, I'm in front of the camera a lot, but I'm really a reserved person. And for some people that can be uncomfortable if you come around me and you for any length of time and you find that he doesn't really talk a lot. I'm very observant. I'll engage you, but all my life I've been an observer. I observe people, I observe situations. I have internal dialogue going on. I'm looking for God in everything. And so this book, the Metaphysical Bible, one of the things I like about it, because you can take every character in the Bible and it gives you the metaphysical meaning behind its name. And that really will help you to decode this mystical book that we are all so steeped in. But see, there's levels to this thing. There's the beginners. And the beginners usually need stories, and the beginners usually buy into things literally. But as you keep living, you'll find out the literal interpretation of that thing don't work. But that's because the literal interpretation doesn't work. Do it mean I need to just throw it all out? No, maybe I need to expand how I've been filtering and receiving. And so as you go into, grow into a metaphysical interpretation of the Bible, and they don't teach this in most schools of theology. They teach the Word of God as the literal Bible, the 66 books, but they also will teach the theologians that some of this stuff ain't true. But your theologians won't tell you that. Your preachers won't tell you that, because that's where their bread is buttered at. If you know that you are not bivocational, that you get all what you get from what you tell the people, you're going to make sure you tell them the things that keeps them within the confines of the construct that allows you to continue to live. Now, that's a whole nother story. There comes a time in all of our lives where we have to look at what we believe, and we have to say, I'm working it, but it's not working. Then if you're really working something and it's not working, then it's time for you to let that go or to reinterpret and see if you can get a different outcome. So in this book tonight, I want to take a moment and go through, because I'm talking about buckling under the weight. The characters in this story that we read in 1 Samuel, and for sake of time, I'm going to encourage you to read it, 1 Samuel. Read the first 15 chapters. This is a very quick story, but read in 1 Samuel and you'll find first there's the arrival of the character. There's Eli. Eli was the priest, or he was the prophet. And the word says in the Old Testament, God does nothing in the earth except he first reveal it to his prophets. Now, let me unpack that metaphysically. I could think of that and say literally, God only spoke through the prophets, which is true in the Old Testament story. But you are earth. You are formed from earth. So God can do nothing in the earth except he speaks first to the man that was formed in the earth. Because it takes the man who is formed in the earth to speak what God says, because God does by speaking and man does by speaking or releasing. So God brings it into the man and the man speaks it. That's what the prophets were about. And so we see Eli was operating in that priestly prophet role. There was a lady by the name of Hannah who was without child, and she was going to the temple, and she was sitting in the silence, and we miss that. A lot of times we think people are sitting in the temple or sitting in these places, and they're praying, they're petitioning. But usually what happens, they would show up there, and there comes a time where they drift into the silence. And in the silence, there was a communication that went on between she and Source. And that conversation was that one God had dropped in on her a desire to have a child. And she had a commitment that if this child comes through me, I was going to return it. She was going to return it to the Lord. And you know the story of Samuel. So when Samuel was born, she makes him up a little ephod and all that stuff. And she delivers him to the temple, and he grows up under the care of Eli. And so one night and this is progression. This is how we grow. One night he was, like every other night, asleep, safe, and he heard his name called. And scripture says he got up and he went presented himself to Eli, and Eli said, no, I didn't call you. What are you talking about? Go back to bed. And so he goes back to bed, and a little later he hears his name called again, and he rushes into Eli and say, here I am. And Eli said, wait a minute, let me tell you something. The next time you hear your name called, Don't run anywhere. Stay there and just present yourself. Say, here I am. And that's what many of us have to do. We have to become settled in to where we are, not running from pillar to post, trying to make things happen. We have to be okay with the peacefulness of the presence that come when we're in the silence. And so while he was in the silence, he began to learn the voice. And as he grew older, he displaced Eli. He took on the duties of the prophet. But he also had some sons. And as he grew old, he began to delegate some of that to his children, his sons. But his sons was nothing like him. And as a result of his sons operating different, they weren't in it for the prophet as the walk of a prophet. They were in it for the profit. Like so many people who are in the ministry today, they're in it for the profit. That's why you can tell when a person is in for the profit or what. And profit does not always mean money. It could mean that this works for me. So I'm going to keep doing it, even though I know that I need to move on. That's why in the Old Testament, Source never allowed them to build houses. They had tents because today they may be required to move. And when you have houses, it's difficult to move because it has a foundation. It's secure right where it's at. And so all of us have to be conscious of, as we are evolving, don't build houses, live in tents. Don't build houses of beliefs, because the belief you hold today could belie you tomorrow. What I mean by that is truth expands. You can't take all truth. You can't handle it. You can't handle all truth immediately. So Source gives it to you in doses. And as you take the dosage and do the work, you now are building the resilience and the muscle that you need to expand. Back to the story. So Samuel was kind of discouraged because he saw what his sons was doing. And as a result of that, the people knew what his sons were doing. And the people began to say, we don't want to follow the prophets anymore. We want to be like the world. And we do that too. We take on practices of the world. We do the things of the world. Now, inside of the many New Thought churches right now, they're beginning to go back to basics. They begin to look at all the things that we've brought on, the stones, the meditations, the readings, and all that stuff is good. But when you are connected to Source, when you learn to hear the voice, you don't need stones. You don't need readers. All those readers and all those people like that operate in different craft are the same as your doctors. Your doctors are just like those who operate in a craft. They have a different science. But here's the reality. There comes a point in your life where you don't even need doctors. Now, I'm stretching it because some people are not there yet, but I want to tell you, if you look down the road, when you are aligned totally with Source, there's no sickness, there's no disease, there's only good in Source, or some call God. So when these things manifest in our lives, it's not that we're punished, but we're leaning more into our human selves, and then we're not mastering the misery of this material life, because what we do is we latch on to the world way of trying to get rid of sickness, disease, pain, discomfort, poverty. But there's one way. The Lord thy God is one. And we have to learn to operate accordingly. Now, so Samuel took this conversation to God. And God said, wait a minute. They have not rejected you. They've rejected me. And because their will is, because anytime you really see the thing about Source, he lets you have the experience you petition for. If you keep saying long enough that you want that you shouldn't have, it'll allow you to get it. Some delays are because you don't need. But if you keep focusing and don't ever reset yourself and get quiet and hear if that's for you, then ultimately source will allow you, because the universe we are in, as a man thinking so is, if you operate the principles for selfish gain, you're going to get what you're asking, but there's a lesson that comes with it. So he told him, he said, Samuel, go to the people, tell the people, I'm going to give you a king. In order to expedite the message tonight, I want to say that the king that was chosen was Saul. Saul represents all of us. Saul represents our who we are in our natural selves and what we can perfect ourselves in. And you know the story that Saul was looking for his father's lost asses. And he had been gone so long that he ultimately decided to turn back, he and the servant. He said, because let us to go back, because by now my father's not worrying about the asses, but he's worried about us. He's probably worried about me. And so let's go back. And so he goes back, but on his way back, he checks his GPS to see where he was at. And he looked at the map and he saw, oh, we right here. There's this guy by the name of Samuel. Let's go visit Samuel. Maybe Samuel, because Samuel was good at telling people, helping people find things. The one thing, when you tune in, tap into the power of God, when you tune into the oneness of God, when you lose things, you can find it. You can ask Source to bring it back to your remembrance, or Source will set you up where you will backtrack and it comes back to you. But then when you really get good at this, Source will reveal to you where it's at. Everything that we have in the natural is a model of what happens in the spiritual realm. You know, they have ways where you can identify things, like you can type in your computer or you got a program on your computer that can tell you where your phone is. If I drop my phone somewhere, it tells me, I can go to my computer, it can say where's the last place I was. Or if somebody happens to steal my phone, I can just, if I get back quick enough before they do what they need to do, I can key in a locator and I'll know exactly where my phone is. Now, might not be wise to go and get it yourself, but at least to know where it's at. And so that's a natural thing that is modeled after a spiritual thing. And so what we have to do is not lean into the natural, but know the natural tells us what we should be able to do in the spirit. And so Samuel has this conversation with Saul, and Saul says to Samuel, he says, wait, let me tell you something. Before you tell you, God knows even before you ask. So that's the thing about desire. When God drops a desire on you, when you ultimately see the thing or feel the thing or desire the thing, God has already started the process of it is working. All you got to say, here I am. Yes, Lord. And so Samuel was told Saul that you couldn't find these in your own strength, but you needed to hear from God. But you're not tuned to God, so God allows you to be tuned to me. And so that's for all of us. There comes a point in your life where you can tune in and you don't need the no one else to be an intermediary for you. Like right now, many of us still have Jesus as the intermediary. But now we've expanded to, we no longer need Jesus. Jesus was only an example. Now we go straight to the Father. But now we have to come to the realization that we're not going out there, but we are turning in here and we're listening. So he says to Saul, the asses have been recovered, but I have something for you. And he went on to tell him that he was going to be the next king. And so he tells him that he was to be next king. Like many of us, you need to know that God knows the plans that he has for you, not to harm you, but to get you to your expected end, to prosper you. But even though you know that God got you, sometimes you get in the way. Saul didn't know. He just took it upon himself when he said, received the word that he was to be king. His idea of the king was that which he has seen in the world, because up until this point there had been no king of Israel that was operating in this system. There was priests and prophets. The word tells all of us that God is waiting for the day where we will be known as a kingdom of kings and priests. That is, like Samuel and Saul. Saul was the king. Samuel was the priest or the prophet. And so they were two distinct individuals, two aspects of yourself. You have the kingly self, which is your natural, your personality, your will. And then you have the priestly self, that small I, that part of you that identifies with God, the part of you that understands ma'at, that is, understands without even being told what's right, what's wrong. That part of you that where your heart is. So inside of you, you have two dispositions. Now, I'm using this story to show you something. Because until you become aware of the priestly side of you, you're going to do all that you can do in the natural part of you. And your natural part of you can get you in trouble. The story goes on that Saul, 1 year in, he loses the promise. He was to be king of Israel his whole life. Now, he ultimately, his entire life was the king of Israel. But what caused him to go crazy was he was a lame duck king. And the reason why he was lame duck, because he did not listen to instruction. The man of God told him, the prophet told him to go to Gilgal, the place of the skull, Golgotha, the same place where the story of Jesus's death, the skull, and we all got to go to Golgotha. We all got to go to our brains. We all got to go to our heads and have our heads crucified. The reason why we have to do that, because the carnal mind is at enmity with the things of God. And the things of God is the things of your heart. And so what Saul did was, Saul had an instruction. The word says there's a way that appears right unto man, but the end thereof is destruction. Here's what happens. Saul, and when you look up the term Saul, it talks about one who operates in and of themselves, his natural ability. He stood head and shoulders above everyone. He was smart. He was athletic. He was all those things. Then, and some of us not those things, so we think we're disqualified because we couldn't possibly do the great things because we're not head and shoulders. We're not sharper than two nails, and all those things. But we have to come to the realization, your natural self is not required to pull this thing off. Is to be present, to be used by your spiritual self. It says, bring your body under subjection to the things of God. I must decrease. That is, the body, the natural me, must increase. It's not enough just to have these truths in your head. For a long time in Christianity, we understand, we quote scripture, we quote them out of context. We don't understand what they mean, but we quote them, we misuse them. And we're using scripture to get what we want. We're not even using scriptures to enhance our relationships with source, to know source in a more intimate way. And that's what it's really all about. It's not about the things. When we go to Matthew chapter 6, that whole chapter talks about that seek ye first the kingdom, and all these things will be added to you. We get caught up in what is the added things, and then we get caught up in the shininess of these added things, and we're only seeking God for the added things. We're not seeking God, source, for the right relationship. So we got to right this ship. What I mean by this, we got to turn this thing around. We have to understand it's all about an intimacy with source. Because when you're intimate with source, you understand how source operates. You understand what source desires to do in the earth through you as you. That's why with God, with source, I'm possible. Without source, it's impossible. You choose. You want to be impossible, or you want to stay in impossible, or you want to be empowered. I'm powered. I am powered. I am a possibility. Why? Because there's something greater in me. So Samuel, he had told Saul what to do. Saul goes to Gilgal, and because the situation presented itself. Now, the perfect situation is always going to put itself forward. So you can see what you're made of. Source knows what you're ready for. He wants you to know what you need to get ready for. And so Saul has this encounter with the people. And it's usually the people around you that influence you not to do things like the whole shot thing. Most people were influenced because everybody was doing it, so that should have been the thing to do. But I saw that just an opportunity for me to see who really believed what they were saying. If I'm a pastor and every Sunday, first Sunday, and for some more frequent than that, we give the communion and we said, this is the blood, and that this blood is able to heal our sin-sick souls. It inoculates us from sickness and disease, because the word says, for this cause, many of you are sick and weak, because you would administer the blood, but you do it in unforgiveness. So what it was sharing to us all these years, we've been doing this thing called communion. And isn't it interesting? Communion should be a time when you are in, that means you're engaging. But as soon as the dilemma come up, we switch to what the world is doing. Now, I had a dilemma myself, because I have a good government job, and I got the memo that everybody that works for the VA, now I'm not just working for the government, I work for the hospital setting. And the hospital setting stated that all employees need to get the shot. I stood on it. I didn't get the shot. Just like when they said all hospital employees need to have the flu shot when I first came on board. I stood on it. Source always makes a way. Always make a way. You just can't react. You just can't react. You have to be a first responder. If Source gave me this, and I stand on I have the ability that I'm fearfully and wonderfully made, and for my own personal conviction is that I didn't get sick. See, people need demonstration in order to deal with their demons. We have to show people how to exercise those lower vibrational thoughts, those ideations that they hold that are not consistent with kingdom. Okay, so Samuel was in a predicament. No, Saul was in a predicament. The people can press you. They knew that the army, the Philistines, was after them, or was coming maybe a couple of days off, and they were saying Samuel had not shown up to make the sacrifice, because usually before they would go into the war, they would have the sacrifice made, and they would go in and win because they believed the sacrifice of the ram, it would save them. No priest, only a king. And what Saul does, he takes it upon himself. He said, bring me the sacrifice. He kills the sacrifice. I'm giving you an abridged version of this. Read the story. Long of it is, as soon as he kills the sacrifice, guess who shows up? Samuel. Source never shows up late. Always shows up on time. A delay in a promise is not a denial. It just means it's not time, or there's something you must do. Wait. Instead of waiting, he buckled under the weight of the people, the pressures of what they wanted. Just like God said, you want a king? We'll give you a king. And so what did he do? He was a king. He was a king that was in the natural. He could kill it. He could fight the battles. He wasn't really, he was learning now. One of the things the king was learning was to lean not to his own understanding. And so this was the second thing that he had done. And so when Samuel showed up and asked him, what did you do? He said, man, This kingdom was yours for your entire life, and it's going to be passed on. And then he says, but this is not going to be. And as Samuel turned to walk away, he grabbed, I could see this being me. He grabbed his garment and tore his garment. Samuel turned around and said, hold up, wait 1 minute. Just as you've torn this garment from me today, the promise is torn from you. He aborted what was his. Now, look at this. For 40 years, he was the king, but he was a lame duck king. He never really had the position of the king because he had aborted it because of disobedience. And I'm speaking to someone tonight. I'm not using disobedience in the way that the old church would, but I'm saying that you must have a mind to do what's right. You must learn not to buckle under the pressures of what it looks like. The moment it don't look right, you go into another affirmation. The moment it doesn't look right, you start all over. The moment it doesn't look right, you start questioning yourself. And the reality in yourself and of yourself, you can't do it. Sometimes the best thing you can do is shut up, get quiet, go into the secret place. It says, he that abides under the shadow of the Almighty. Come on now. That's where you need to go. Go in, turn inside. Stop looking at what is outside. Change what you look at, and the things you look at change. Turn away from it. Turn it off. Stop listening to it. Stop looking at it. So now for 40 years, he's seeing David, who gets chosen as a little boy. David gets chosen as the next king. Now let's talk about David. Okay, Samuel represents you as the priest to be able to hear. You need to learn to hear, to see in the realm. Saul represents you before you learn to do that. Then David represents one who learns to hear, but also one who has the love for his heart, had a heart for God. And so we are David, Samuel, and Saul. David wasn't perfect in the sense of he didn't make missteps, but he was perfect in all that he knew to do. Even though he had some strange encounters, like the experience he had as a voyeur when he was voyeuring over into Bathsheba's house. And because he was voyeuring over into that thing, it ignited in him something that he should have looked away from. And ultimately that thing got him. And he because he was a king, he used his influence to persuade this young lady. And so you know that how that story went. Ultimately he had a baby and all of that. So, but here's the point I'm making today. How do you wait in the silence? You don't have to do anything else. You ain't got to do another rosary. You don't have to pray it again. You don't have to have all these affirmation cards. Now, it's good to have those things, but have them in balance. Don't lean into those things. You must be able to trust in the Lord, in the law. Lean not to your own understanding. Don't try to make things happen. Allow things to happen. For if source has dropped in on you a desire, don't go to figuring how you're going to do it, what you need to do, how many more jobs you need to get, who you need to get away from, who you need to get up against. Don't go into strategy. Don't go into scheming. All you do is spend time in the silence and you say, here I am, Lord. And then you become one with it. And it begins to deliver to you. If you're in the secret place, you get secret things. That's my message for you tonight. Take it easy. Find out what's required of you. Stick to it. It's not for you to know when. It's not even for you to know how. It's all it is for you to know. It is. And so it is. 10 minutes left. Let's get a dialogue going. Questions. Okay, somebody says source always make a way. Yes, source does always. That's Courtney. It does make a way. Let me see here. Okay, so I just see we got a class full of people. What's your takeaway? What did you learn tonight? Talk to me. Courtney says, thanks for the excellent teaching. So I'll help you guys out. I'll do like the teacher at the end of the lesson. I'll start with the student in the front of the class that raises her hand. Good evening, Myrna. How are you doing? And none of you try to leave the room. I still got 7 minutes of your time. Good evening. How you doing, Myrna? You have the mic. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. 2 things hit me hard tonight. I agree. Excellent teaching. The first one was, oh my God, I screamed when you said we get in our own way. I was like, Lord, he hit me.
No, I didn't. I'm not an abusive. No, I'm joking with you. Right.
Oh my gosh, do I get in my own way trying to help God and trying to figure it out? And so your closure with that, the strategy and so part of that with the strategy, it's already there. So I've got to learn to just stay. And that's what Spirit has been saying to me. Just spend time with me and listen.
Yes.
And all we trying to do is figure it out, do it our way, do it the world's way. That's so doggone hard, just to be still. And then when God gives you an idea, what? Really? Okay. And so in that process, it's I'm looking forward to experiencing that, because to me, that's an adventure.
Yeah.
That's an adventure.
Right. So I know you're a voice coach. That's correct, right?
Yes.
And so do you ever tell your students to listen? What are they to listen in any way?
Yes, they are. I was about to say, what? That you have to listen. You have to listen.
I'm not a voice coach, so I don't know. And I don't sing. You definitely, but I think I saw somewhere like somebody would say, like some people, when I see them sing, they'll put their finger to their ear. It's like they're closing off so they can hear. What's that all about?
Well, one should not do that, but what they're doing is they're closing their ears so that they can hear their own voice. Because how you sound, how you sound, when we're singing, the voice is coming outside of our mouth, and so that's why a lot of singers say, I don't like how I sound, because what they hear in their head, what we hear in our head, is a little bit different than what comes out of our mouths. And so a great artist said to voice students that I was in the audience of, and he said, you need to fall in love with your voice, because that's what the audience hears. And they're not hearing what's in your head, they're hearing what's coming out of your mouth. And so that listening piece, they're trying to listen so they can be in tune with what they're hearing. And a lot of times they can't hear themselves because there's so much noise, especially if there's a lot of, the band is really loud and they can't hear themselves performing with the band, and they'll close one ear, so that they can hear themselves and listen out of the other ear.
So as a professional singer, how do you resolve, like when you got the loud band, how do you hear what you need to hear?
First of all, I tell the band to come down.
So you decree the environment to come into alignment with what represents your highest and best good. Okay.
Exactly. As the band leader, as the performer who's out front that the audience is looking at and judging and placing, they're not looking at the band, they're looking at whoever's in front. And so my first thing is to bring the band down, because if I can't hear myself, then I'm going to sound out of tune. I'm going to sound disconnected from the band. And so adjusting the volume first is the first thing I do. And then the other thing is, because my voice can't compete against amplification.
So God's voice can't compete against, okay? Because your voice is God's voice, okay?
Yes, and so can't compete against the noise that's happening outside. I can't compete against that. And so bring the volume down. I can't compete. And then I need a monitor in front of me to be able to amplify what I'm singing. And so I'm going into the microphone, this amplifying back so I can hear what I'm singing. And so
what do you mean amplify?
A singer has a monitor in front of him or her, that because when you're singing in a microphone, your voice is going into the microphone, and so you need to be able to hear, and so the monitor in front of you sends back to you so that you can hear what you sound like, because you can't, like I said, you can't hear it if the band is so loud. So you need your monitor, your speaker that's sending your voice back to you. It may not be sending the other instruments back, but it's sending your voice back to you.
So let me ask you a question. So let me get this right. So I'm singing my voice into the microphone. The monitors bring back to me. The monitor is kind of like the world. It's reflecting. So if what's coming through the monitor is messed up, it's only reflecting. If I'm singing off key, singing into the mic doesn't change that.
No, it doesn't. It just amplifies whatever.
It amplifies. Okay. So here's my message. What's showing up in our lives are amplifying what we're speaking. And if what we're getting coming back through these monitors, and life is the monitor, then there's nothing wrong with the monitors. You already cut the band down. Then you got to look at the error is with the singer, the speaker. Does it make sense?
Yep, that's it. If it's a hot mess going into the mic, it's a hot mess.
So many of our lives are, let's just be honest, because this thing is a trial and get it right, not a trial and error, because there is no error. As long as you're trying to grow, there is no error in the sense that it's a bad thing. You correct it. You learn to cut the band down. You learn that the monitors are going to send back to me. And if I'm not hearing what I like, maybe I need a voice coach. And that's what some of us has come to the realization. Maybe I need somebody to help me to tweak my word, to tweak how I'm using the word. Thank you, Myrna.
Thank you.
I don't need to ask anybody else because I think that was the example that we needed to bring it all home. Thank you for this excellent teaching, Courtney. Source always makes a way. Hello, guys. Good. And y'all make me work too hard. It's not like, so let me tell you something. When I show up at speaking engagements and they give me that big check after I speak, it really don't bother me if there's no questions. But when I show up here, I'm showing up that Christ be formed in you. Many of those platforms don't make space for me to have audience interaction. But the way we learn is by questions. And so sometimes we try to backdoor engineer everything. But when we have the opportunity to get more clarity, like I asked Myrna, what is the monitor for? What do you deal with the band? I ask those things that I must learn. And in learning that, I've now expanded another example that I can use. And metaphorically, singing represents our own lives. Who are you listening to? What words are you singing? Are you got too much background noise? Do you have too many distractors? So I just challenge each of us it's 7:59. We're right on time. To wait. Don't buckle under the weight. Wait on the Lord. Now, as we wrap up this evening, I just want to thank each of you for coming out. I will prepare the boot camp for 4 consecutive Tuesdays. I'll get that information to you. If this ministry has been a blessing to you, don't forget to be a blessing to it. I'm not saying that every time you come on that you have to sow a seed, but let each of you examine yourself. Do you support the ministry at the measure that could keep the ministry going? That's all I have to say. because I'm going to keep doing it until Christ is formed in you. Somebody said the musical example, that's Tia, Minister Tia said, the musical example was awesome for expanding our understanding, and thanks. Thank you for being present tonight, Myrna. And just like Myrna is present, each of you, you are a gift. You have an experience, an expression that will bring clarity for those who are trying to get the lesson. So in the days to come, don't hesitate to jump in, but get in where you fit in. That's all I have, and I'm going to go back to our song that we were listening to before we ended up. Let me see if I can get that. And you guys have a wonderful evening, and I'll see you on tomorrow morning for those of you who are in the 40 days there. And those who desire to be a blessing, you know how to find out how to be. You can open the email, and there's some links in there for you. So listen to these words.
Lord, I seem to find my strength while I'm waiting on you. I am waiting on you, waiting on you, patiently waiting on you. Lord, I seem to find, strength while I'm waiting on you. Say it one more time. I am waiting on you. Lord, I'm waiting on you. I'm patiently waiting on you. 'Cause I am worried about the time. Lord, I seem to find my strength while I'm waiting on you. Oh, they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They will mount up with wings just like eagles. They will run, never be weary. They'll walk and never faint. Oh, Lord, that's why I will choose to wait. Yes, I am. Waiting on you. Patiently waiting on you. Oh, yeah. I ain't worried about the time. Lord, I seem to find. Strength while I'm waiting. Sing it, come on. Oh, yeah.
Listen to this.
Upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They will mount up with wings like eagles. And not grow weary. They shall walk and shall not faint. No, no, come on. That is why I will choose to wait. 'Cause I'm waiting on you. Lord, I'm waiting on you. Patiently waiting on you. I ain't worried about the time. 'Cause Lord, I seem to waiting on you. Sing that verse one more time. So come on, tell them this. You just wait upon the Lord. He shall renew their strength. They will mount up with wings Yes, they will. Like the they shall run and not grow weary. No, they shall walk and shall not faint. That is what I will do.